Greetings, welcome back to Pink Oddbird. We're going to continue on with the organizational process, and today I'm here to show you how to make this roll-up caddy for your scrap trims. So let's get started. So carrying over from the last video where we organized our laces, we were left with a bunch of little scrap pieces that didn't quite meet 1 yard. So I've got them all divided out into color-coded piles, and we're going to make something today to get these all stored away. So I'm just starting out with the pair of jeans that was destined for the thrift store. You can use jeans as well. You just want to make sure that the length of the leg is long enough to accommodate the length of your roll. Mine is, it's going to be about 28 inches that I need, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out. If you don't have denim, you can use any other fabric that you might have as your base fabric. Once you've determined the length of your roll and you've cut down the seam of the leg, open up the panel and measure it to make sure that it's going to be tall enough to accommodate the height of your roll. I've made just a crude little template for my project, and you can do the same for yours. I estimated on what I thought my pockets should be. Once you do that, you just want to start working on this panel and getting it leveled off to be a perfect rectangle. I should say as close to a perfect rectangle as you can. Once you do that, you really want to get this leveled off. So I'm measuring out 12 inches because that's the height that I need to accommodate for the 10 inches that my roll will be, plus 1 inch hem on the top and the bottom. Now that we've got our rectangle, I'm going to go ahead and iron mine out. You can skip this step if you want, but I'm just going to do it because I want to make sure that I have this seam piece in the center here going in all one direction. Taking my ruler, I'm just going to estimate about 1 inch for that bottom hem, and then I'm going to go back in and do the same thing for the top. As you can see, I'm really doing this in sort of a very rustic fashion. I'm not measuring it out too deeply because this project is just for me. So what I did was I went and gave this 2 stitches, one along the top part of the hem, and then the second stitch is going to hold that flap closed. Going back into my measurements here, I want to start out by working on the 2 outer large pockets. Next, you want to go into your fabric stash and find one that you have a pretty good abundance of, because depending on how many pockets you have and how big they are, you might need a lot of fabric. Next, I'm just going to trace out the size of the large pocket that I need times 2. So we've got both of our pockets prepared here. What I'm about to show you here is a step in the process, but it is actually not supposed to come first. I left it in because I wanted you to know that this isn't a perfect and flawless process. But if you do it this way, it can still be, you can still work with it, but you really actually want to get the long sides of the pockets hemmed before you get the short sides. Here's the way that you actually want to do this step. Fold the long hems up first and get those ironed down, and then you can do the sides. I'm just going to use the first pocket as a template. I know this might seem like a lot of work to some of you, but to me it really is worth it. I want to have something that looks really nice and not cluttered. It gives me anxiety and I have to actually stop what I'm doing when I'm crafting and it's not clean. So being able to have this stuff in a nice, like tucked away fashion is going to be so much better for me and make it easier for when I want to just reach for this, I can open it up and just grab the trims that I want. I'm also trying to stick to the objectives of not going out to buy something new in order to store the items that we already have. So it's really kind of like all going in with the theme of just using what you have to make something work for storage. And if you also have a small craft space like I do, I hope you're finding this helpful. So if you're following along on the screen here, what I want to do is give myself a good maybe 1/4 of an inch on the top and bottom of this pocket. And as you can see, I've got one large flap folded and I want to go ahead and lock that in with the iron and then fold it back on itself and get that crease locked in once again. In case you're wondering, that folded back flap is going to actually give our pocket a gusset to allow for more space for storage. So I'm just getting the long side of the hem sewn down first, and I like to give it 2 stitches, 1 zigzag and 1 straight. Next, it gets a little tricky because of the angle, but what I'm showing you here is that I'm lining up the outer edge of the panel with the back of the pocket, and I'm going to stitch that down together. Once you have the bottom of the pocket stitched together with the outer panel of the roll, you want to go ahead and go in and open up these flaps, as you can see here, and then pull back the top flap and sew down the bottom flap. If you don't have a sewing machine, you can do these same steps with glue. So you would just glue down the edge portion and then you can glue down the bottom flap of this fabric. This is what it would look like if you wanted to do this process with glue. So as you can see, we've got one large pocket here with gussets, and I'm happy with the way this looks so far. And we've got one on this side and we've got the other on the opposite end. Going back into my trusty dusty measurements, we want to focus on these pockets that are on the inside of the panel. There's 4 of them and they are smaller. I actually did a little bit different measurement than what I had written here. I actually did them at about 8.5 inches by 6 inches tall. So I'm just going in to measure that out and cut them all out. Some of you might be wondering, this project took me about 2 hours to do, and that's factoring in the filming time. I did have to, set the camera up and move it around to do the different things that I was doing. So that's accounted for, but it could take you less time. So it doesn't really take, a whole lot of time. So don't feel intimidated by how long this might take you. So originally I wanted my pockets to be about 5 inches a piece. Here they're about 5.25. I test this out on my roll and I think they're too small. So I widen those pockets out a bit and I iron them down once I'm happy with the width. Once all 4 of these are cut out, I only want to sew the hems down on the top and the bottom of the pocket. I am not going to be sewing down the sides of the pockets. Those are going to be glued down. What I did do was take this over to my machine and sew down just the bottom panel of each of these 4 pockets. So you'll see that here in just a second. So I went ahead and sewed those 4, and then I'm going to pull these back and add glue to the inner sides of these flaps that we have creased down. And because we're putting the glue on the inner part of the flap, it's going to allow your pockets to have a little bit more room to expand. At this point, I think I was about ready to keel over from excitement, and my husband was looking at me like I'm a crazy person. But I have pockets, you guys. So if you can't tell, this is kind of like a combination of those door hangings. I don't have a door that I would be able to hang one of these from, and I should say I don't have a spare door to hang one from. And then it's also a combination of those like little caddies that you could take with you on vacation where you roll all your like toothbrush and stuff up. So I kind of combine the two to make this. So now it's the fun part of stuffing all these little laces into the pockets, and I'm so excited and I'm so happy with how this turned out, and I just can't wait to see what it's going to look like when it's all rolled up. And as happy as I am with this, it isn't without flaw. There are a few things that I would do differently if I ever make this again. You also have the option of adding a like flap to the top of this roll so that you can conceal the trims once you have it all rolled up, if that's something that you care about. Doesn't bother me too much, but there is one thing that I would change, and you'll see that in just a second here when I get this all rolled up. But I'm so happy. Look at all these trims. So even though it's really fluffy looking, it still rolls up really nicely and really compact. And you might already spy with your little eye, one thing that I would change in this roll is when it's rolled up this way in one big roll, you can see the fabric from the pocket that's on the outer edge. What you can do to get around that though is when you're making this, give yourself an allotment of fabric at the end that would basically serve as a wrap, like a wraparound to cover up that pocket so you wouldn't actually see that. It doesn't terribly bother me, but it's something to think about if you do make this. Of course, as queen of hacks and workarounds, I do have another option that you can do if you want to make it the same way, or if you've been following along with this process. So I do have a backup option to how you can roll this back up, but this is what it looks like. As you can see, I just unrolled it and it's all intact. It's perfectly fine. And here I go. I'm rolling up one edge, and then what I thought I would do is roll up the second edge and make it kind of like a jelly roll sort of, and bring the two rolls together and then tie it off, and then you don't see that pocket anymore hanging from the outside. So it's still just as compact and it's still as neat looking, and yeah, it's just another option. So I can easily put this on top of a shelf that's right underneath my desk, so it's right there ready for me to grab it. Very easy, very tidy. Or if you don't have a shelf like this somewhere near your desk, you can stand it up on the floor. As you can see, it stands up by itself. And yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for me for now. Be sure to stay tuned because you never know what direction this odd flock of ours is heading into. And until next time, toodaloo.